Roleplay recap. Whew! That was a roller coaster. This is where negotiations get kind of fun. You've done your prep, and now you have to think on your feet. It's a totally different mindset, a totally different part of your brain. Did you catch the moment where my planning flew out the window? We'll get into it. Let's walk through that negotiation. I was playing hardball for most of it. The seller tried everything to bring me into a collaborative mindset. I wasn't having it until it looked like I might really lose the deal. And then I played nice. But I reverted to hardball at the very end. We still got the deal through. I credit the seller for that. They were patient and they really did make it work. I came in with a take it or leave it offer. I offered $400,000 on a list price of $550,000. That's 27% off the list price. The seller knew immediately it was not a serious good faith offer. They just put the house on the market. It wasn't like the house had been sitting there for 2 years. Did I establish any rapport with the seller? No. I didn't even exchange the barest of pleasantries. I came in hot and knocked them off balance a bit. And so the seller named the hardball tactic. They called me out on lowballing. They tried to control the pace, telling me to take a minute and think. But was I having it? Absolutely not. I refused to budge. I said, take it or leave it. I'm sticking to my lowball offer. At this moment, I'm thinking there's a chance that the seller might cave. But the seller is reasoning with me. So this is an impressive person. This person must have experience with difficult negotiators. The seller points to research. They offer to share information. This is an effort to move the conversation into third-party standards. The seller is saying, all right, maybe I can show you how the rest of the world reasons through this. So the seller is hoping to appeal to my rationality. Now, I'm still not having it. I take a look at the spreadsheet, but I'm going to counter by imposing an extreme deadline. This is a fresh tactic, the extreme deadline. And I'm piling an extreme deadline on top of the take it or leave it offer. So I'm escalating while layering hardball tactics atop one another, while the seller is trying to de-escalate using collaborative tactics. Now, there's no real reason that I need this deal done by the end of the day. In fact, most deals this complex are never done by the end of one day. But the seller, bless the seller, they're still not walking away from me. Again, they name the hardball tactic. They're letting me know that they recognize the game I'm playing. They swap my deadline away by telling me they've just put the house on the market. Then they go full nice guy. They acknowledge the few good things about my offer. They tell me they like the idea of cash. They tell me they believe I can credibly move quickly. And they throw out an alternate deadline. End of week, no hard feelings. And this is so reasonable. It's still an aggressive timeline, but it leaves space for some give and take. Again, the seller is trying to slow the pace. And how do I respond? Well, I escalate even further. I'm making it personal. I say, oh, you're really testing my patience here. It's a heck of a line. In fact, even watching the video, it looks brash. I'm putting the deal at risk. I must do this all the time because I'm really pushing the seller hard. So I must be confident that I can find a similar property elsewhere. Note that at this point, neither of us have even talked about middle ground numbers at all yet. Our negotiation is actually taking longer because of my hardball tactics. So maybe I came in thinking I could force my aspiration point, and that's not happening so far. So the seller recognizes it's time for a timeout. They actually apologize to me. Now, this is not necessary, but the seller is doing everything they can to build goodwill, to establish rapport late in the game. The seller shares their list of comps, so they're making another appeal to third-party standards. They're hoping the break cools me down a little. Maybe they think I simply haven't done my research, and their spreadsheet will sway me upward. So what happens after the break? I come in, and I've pulled 300 comps. Guess what? All 300 comps are in my price range. And at this point, it doesn't really even matter if the comps are credible or not. I'm using the flood of information tactic. There's no way the seller is going to review all 300 comps and have a civil discussion about each one of them. It's a waste of time. We've each done independent research. We've arrived at independent conclusions, and there doesn't seem to be any middle ground. So, at this point, I have finally pushed the seller to their limit. They're losing hope in me. They've tried several collaborative tactics, and they don't seem to be getting my attention. So they finally try a hardball tactic of their own. They're fighting hardball with hardball. I forced their hand, and now it's time for them to throw a mudball. What does the seller do? Well, this is a neat tactic. They walk away, but they leave their jacket on the chair. They're storming out, but they're also leaving themselves a reason to come back. Now, in real life, storming out is pretty extreme. Even if you leave a pen on the table or a jacket on the chair, you should be prepared for the cracking relationship between you and your negotiating partner to shatter. It's a risky tactic. But in this case, the seller comes back. They've played a hardball card. They want to see if fighting fire with fire has gotten my attention. They make another attempt to reset the tone of our conversation. They name the issue. Our conversation has taken a combative tone. Then they change the subject. They ask me what interests and priorities drive my price. Now they've gotten my attention. I answer the question honestly. I tell them about my budget and about my calculations. I call their attention to the work that has to be done on the house. Something funny happens here. I throw out a huge concession. I come up on price from $400,000 to $500,000. There's no $450, no $475. So what was I doing here? Well, I'll be honest, I made a mistake, and this happens with hardball players sometimes. They carefully plan each tactic, the pattern of escalation, but once they've been disarmed, once they've been brought to the table, they haven't planned their pattern of concessions. So I gave up a ton of ground in that one comment. I didn't ask my own questions. I didn't try to scope the Zopa. I was so focused on my aspiration point that I didn't plan a staircase of concessions to climb up. The seller senses this. All of a sudden, they have the upper hand. We're only $50,000 from their asking price. They also recognized that they've tamed my fire a little. The seller maintains civility. They try to bring me up to $525. They're going to offer some little concessions. It's not going to cost them $25,000 to replace the fridge and oven and to plant a few tulips. So they offer to introduce me to their local contractor. This sounds like several concessions. The seller is giving me 3 things: appliances, curb appeal, and a trustworthy contractor. But do those things cost the seller more than a few $1,000s? No way. I'm persuaded. I've disclosed my reservation point, $550,000 all in. So whether intentional or not, I gave the seller something to work with. They can persuade me this whole project won't cost me more than that. So we're so close to this deal. We've landed on a number. The seller has offered some little concessions. Despite the bumpy road, we're almost there. And then, Hardball Paula comes back. From the seller's perspective, it's probably like Jekyll and Hyde. They're wondering, what the heck is going on with me? They're making a mental note to Google me to see if I'm a serial scammer. Hardball Paula goes for the nibble. They've nearly struck a deal, and she's throwing in one more concession. She wants all new windows. What? But the seller is ready. The seller must have taken a negotiations course. So the seller starts by locking me in. The seller sees what I'm up to and wants to make sure this is the only nibble I get away with. So the seller makes me promise this is my last ask. And I promise I can't really ask for more at this point. And it turns out the seller is prepared with their own nibble. The seller agrees to replace the windows in exchange for a waived inspection and promise of an all-cash deal that closes by the end of the week. Now, in many cases, a waived inspection is a larger concession than a window replacement. It depends on the context. But now I'm on the receiving end of the nibble. I want the deal. I've gotten my nibble in, so I agree to the deal. Now let's quickly look at our numbers. Our aspiration points were both clear from the start. Mine was $400,000 and the seller's was $550,000. Did the seller ever have to reveal their BATNA or their reservation point? No. They were able to keep it concealed. I can tell you their reservation point was $520,000 because I know how the script was developed. It's okay to keep your BATNA in your back pocket. In this negotiation, the seller got a deal without sharing that information. So what was my reservation point? Well, it was $550,000 all in, and I revealed that impulsively when I was talking about the kitchen renovation. And to be honest, that was a mistake. I should have shut my mouth after I dissed their kitchen. I could have thrown out some renovation number and said, it just doesn't add up or something vague. Because once the seller knew my reservation point, they could work backwards and get the deal. So the ZOPA here was between $525,000 to $550,000 all in, or so probably $500,000 to $530,000 in cash, depending on the scope of the negotiations. The seller came down pretty close to their reservation point, but they got a lot for it. Cash deal, waived inspection, quick close. Their home selling headache is over by the end of the week. They're sleeping well tonight.